Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us late on the second day of Collision. I'm Rhett Power. I am CEO of Accountability Inc., an executive coaching firm based in Washington, D.C. And it is wonderful to be here, guys. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks.
We've been talking about tech all week. We've been talking about AI, been talking about all that. But I want to talk about how you've built your companies, because I think that's a really important conversation that we often gloss over, right? So can you guys talk about building? You're both SaaS companies. Can you talk about building a mission? And I know it's one of your passions, but can you guys talk about building a mission-driven organization and why that's so critical today? And go ahead, Christopher.
Yeah, maybe a real quick summary of what we do. Aurora Solar is the leading software platform for solar, really for the solar industry. So our software lets solar professionals design better, faster, and ultimately cheaper solar energy. With the goal, or our mission, is to create a future of solar energy for all. That's really what all this stacks up to be. And so we did that. We started 10 years ago, and actually for us, we had an interesting path because we wanted to first start a solar installation business, and through that we figured out the needs of that type of business, started building software for ourselves, and that's how we stumbled across the problem that we're solving today. But it was always with that goal, right? That's what drove us to create a future of solar energy for all. We saw with all the forecasts that are up and to the right, and we're like, how do we get to that place, right? In the future, where most of our energy is generated by renewables, the place that we need to get to. And it was clear to us that something like what we do needed to exist, and that's how we started Aurora.
But why did you build your company with intention and a mission? And how do you keep people in your organization engaged? How do you keep people in tune with the mission that you have?
I mean, for us, I know it's for you, Jenny, but for us, it's at the core, right? It's what the whole thing is about. And we have the benefit, and I think this is a little bit by chance that we arrived there, but it's really beautiful when it comes together, is that the success of the company is inherently aligned with the value we drive for our customers, which is aligned with the mission, right? If we deliver value to our customers, it makes their processes better, allows them to design better solar, there's value created, and that will ultimately trickle down to better or cheaper solar. And so that sort of inherent alignment is a fantastic forcing function. And then the other part is about people, right? Attracting the right talent. That's an interesting edge too, right? A lot of folks today want to make a change. I want to make a change, right? And so we find a lot of great talent that comes to us because they want to apply their skills in a way that really makes a difference.
What's the culture, and I'm going to come to you in a second, what's the culture you have to be able to attract that talent?
Yeah, it's one that's obviously mission centric, so that matters a lot to us. Our mission features in everything we do, but it's also what is the right set of values and the right combination of people that you need to create that mission. So there's a lot of other things you have to do. It's not just enough to put a mission on the wall or in a slide deck, but then it comes to organizational design. Like, how do you create that combination of people, the right sets of talent in the right processes to drive towards that mission? So there's a lot of nitty-gritty that needs to follow once you define your mission. But again, for us, that nice forcing function is that our commercial success is so deeply intertwined with our mission.
I mean, I think for me, it really starts with life is short. So I personally don't want to waste time working on problems I don't care about. And I think that's pretty much how I started. So I started my career working in a clean tech company because we were solving a problem I cared about, and then worked for a media company because I believe quality media is like the first pillar of democracy. And while working in these companies, there was a pattern. And the pattern was, as these companies scaled, first of all, the alignment started to fall apart, so the clarity of where we're going, like to actually pursue that mission, what is everyone's role is in getting us there. The second challenge that always came up when companies were scaling was the organizational health and culture deteriorated. And the third challenge was there often weren't enough like clear structures, processes, good habits in place to fully develop people. So for me personally and for my co-founder, we started with that problem, like seeing that over and over again in organizations as a challenge. We said, like, we actually want to solve that. And that's a meaningful opportunity for us to dedicate the next 10 years of our life to. And so what we've done is like basically starting off from a problem we really care about, and from that vantage point build Leapsome, which is a platform that helps companies build alignment, build organizational health, build really great people experiences. And it's a very big pattern in our success, I would say. So when we hire, for example, we hire against 3 very specific sort of like dimensions. One is purpose fit. Like, do these folks care as much as we care about making work fulfilling and solving this problem? We hire for cultural ads, and we hire for functional fit. And thereby we ensure that we also only bring missionaries onto the team and not mercenaries. And I think that's for us is something where we see a very distinct energy and density and talent in the way we can execute just by bringing folks together that are truly aligned around this purpose and mission as a company. And I think the way we then further also operate turn it into action is we have the purpose is like, why do we exist as the company, starting from our own stories. Then the culture is like, how do we go about as a company to win in this market? And then comes the what, like what are our long-term objectives? We want to be the category leader in our space. What are the short-term objectives, the annual, the quarterly OKRs? But we always start from that North Star of why do we exist and how do we actually want to get there.
Do you guys think that that's essential? You talked about the North Star. Do you think that's essential today in survival?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Do you think it's essential today for a company to have that North Star and to really be intentional about building culture, values, mission? Is that, essential for survival?
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, I think there's enough big problems that need to be solved. I mean, if we look at the air outside in Toronto these days, I think there's a lot of big problems that require human talent and potential to be tackling them. And I think we don't only have the big problems, we also have an unprecedented speed of technological change to actually tackle these problems. So I feel like everything else than tackling big problems, again, is a bit of a waste of time and human potential. And I think then from sort of like the bottom-up perspective, what we see is that a lot of folks nowadays, like in North America and Europe, are very much sort of like on top of Maslow's hierarchy in the sense of like a lot of the basic needs are met, like people earn enough salaries. So self-actuation and like finding purposeful work is actually something that I think for millennials, Gen Zs is very top of mind. So I think we need to actually build companies that have an answer to that sort of like desire. And I think, again, it unleashes a very specific kind of energy of drive that we also see at Leapsome that I think also helps us to go faster and have real impact. So I think it's something that we should all be optimizing for.
Yeah, I think any organization needs, or is certainly much more effective with a clear North Star. I think that applies whether that's mission-driven or not. The question then is, what is that North Star, right? How clearly do you define it? But also, since we're talking about mission, like, can you find a North Star that's worth solving, right?
I think
that's ultimately, because a North Star could be drive,
right,
X% increase in ad revenue, and that's a fine North Star that will serve as a forcing function. But it might not be. For some people that's a problem to solve, and it's certainly interesting in technical regards. But since we're talking about mission, can we find North Stars? And there's no shortage of those, right? No shortage of problems that need to solve. And to your point, there's so much opportunity now, right, with all the progress we're seeing. So yeah, I think problems can be exciting, So
absolutely,
there's a whole buffet of problems. Now it's just a question of picking one and then defining the right North Star and coming up with new solutions. And ultimately, it's about dreaming about a better future, right? And then problem solving our way there.
I like the takeaway though of, is it a problem worth solving?
Yes.
I think that's a really good point. Let me ask you guys, the speed of change is just, it's so fast now, and it really is hard to keep up. How important, with this speed of change, we often make compromises and we take shortcuts Some organizations do. How do you keep up with that speed of change in terms of your leadership and your decision making? When you have tough decisions, how do you make those tough decisions when you don't maybe have all the information? You're trying to look through a crystal ball and say, in 6 months it may look like this, a year it might look like something completely different. I guess my question is, how do you make decisions in this environment? And when you have tough decisions to make, how do you keep your values in mind? Because I feel like our values really have to guide us in those tough times, those tough decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think there's a couple points there, right? One, you alluded to it, orient around your mission and your values. If you know what your why, right, then you'll have direction that helps you make decisions. The other thing is keep learning, right? In a time when things change so fast, you have to keep up, right? And also, if you're growing a company fast, things change so fast that you have to keep learning. If you don't learn, you're behind. And the third thing is you don't have to do everything, right? Hire great, talented people and empower them. There's a lot of knowledge in our organizations that we can rely on that comes out once you empower people and you give them that North Star. You don't have to prescribe everything. You don't have to solve all the problems yourself. And there's a lot of magic that comes from that.
Maybe to build on that last point, because I think that's essential. We live in too complex a world of sort of like leading command and control organizations, right? We need to really leverage the entire organization to be part of that problem, solution, innovation, iteration engine. And the question is, how do we get there? And I think in the end, that's why I believe alignment is so essential in today's organization. And I think alignment is, yes, what's the purpose, what's the long-term strategy, but it's also like bringing that down to the daily doing. Like, what is our focus that we really want to achieve this given quarter? And what does that mean for the specific team, maybe for the specific function, sub-team, individual, to really make sure in this complex world that we still have focus and can learn and iterate fast. So I think that's why bringing down the alignment all the way from the purpose to the daily doing is really, really important in today's world. And I think everybody needs that certain alignment and context to be really taking the best possible decentral decisions, to really distribute ownership as effectively as we can. And I mean, for example, folks that are closer to the front line, to the customer, like they might pick up things that you don't necessarily see in the data. So being able to put the qualitative and the quantitative together and just have the ownership sort of like dispersed to some extent in a way, obviously flowing back up sort of like as well, so you can combine the top down and the bottom up, is really, really essential to be navigating this complex world. And I think the second part is, next to alignment, I think it's essential for us to have really effective learning cultures in organizations. And for learning and innovation to happen, we need psychological safety. So it needs to be okay to challenge something, to doubt something, to sort of contribute a really novel idea. So I think this is why we really need to optimize organizations for that psychological safety, to actually really be able to build that foundation for innovation and decentral sort of like innovation that can happen. And I think this is actually one where I think we need to be particularly intentional when we move to fully remote environments. We actually are intentionally hybrid, not fully remote, because I think it's not impossible, but it's much harder to build that same level of psychological safety and learning and innovation into an organization if you're entirely remote. So I think we just need to be a lot more intentional. It can be done, just needs more intentionality.
Great points, thank you. So leadership has always been hard, but I think the role of leaders today is much harder. Right? You have so many minefields that you can walk right into, whether it's social or something you say that is taken wrong. The speed of change. We're coming out of the pandemic. We were talking about that before we came out. And navigating all of that as a leader is really tough. What's your advice for leaders on how to keep it together, how to manage yourself, how to manage yourself as a leader? How do you make decisions? These are a lot of questions, sorry. But, how do you deal with this change and this pressure as a leader? And just maybe a couple personal things from yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey of constant growth, right? Growth for the company, but commensurate with that, there has to be personal growth that happens. So keep learning, keep reinventing yourself. That's a critical part of the process. But the other part is also, to my previous point, the team, right? Surround yourself with people who have experience, who are better at what they do than you, and leverage them, right? And empower them and step out the way. And there's a lot of wonderful things that happen.
That's easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, it's very hard.
So how do you do it?
But ultimately, that's the job, right?
Okay.
If you're at the head of an organization, you don't. Actually, my perspective shifted after we started really scaling, because I used to write code and build the product, and I couldn't do that anymore. But then I realized I'm still building. I'm just building the thing that builds the thing, right? It's a meta process, and the company is sort of a product in itself and a machine in itself. I find even that this is kind of what we've been circling in this conversation, right? Organizations are change machines, right?
Very
really.
much so.
And they're one of the most powerful ways of affecting change that we as humans have come up with. And so now the question is, okay, but change is not all positive, right? There's good change and bad change. So how do we pick the right one, the right North Star, and then how do we build the best functioning machines through better leadership, through alignment, through right people, and so forth. And so that's really what ultimately is about. And it's a lot of magic that comes from that. And so, in a way, you can think of yourself as the architect of that change machine.
And then get out of the way
then get out the way. And that's one of the most. That's where I would consider my success. If this thing keeps running and humming, and I'm just the builder of that machine, and it keeps on cruising and affecting positive change for the world. That will be the ultimate success.
All right.
And I mean, I think very much can relate to everything you said, and maybe to build upon that, I think what's important for me personally is get myself into like a headspace where I can take good decisions through like good habits, meditation, exercising, eating well. I mean, I think on a very fundamental level, so I'm in a space where I can actually take good decisions.
Right.
I think the second one for me is actually that I like to maintain my headspace for the important decisions. So I think there can also be a tendency that sometimes folks ask you maybe questions when you say like push back and I want a proposal, or like I want a decision from you, like I don't want to use my precious computing power of my brain to take that decision. So I think knowing what decisions to take and also knowing what decisions not to take, I think is very essential for me. And I think the third one is, I think I try to like get sort of like insights from the data, get insights through conversations across the organization. We have like a coffee chat hour where everybody can book sort of like a time slot, which is sometimes helpful to get sort of like information and not just from unexpected points in the organization, in addition to getting external information, taking all these data points. But then at the same time, I try to actually optimize rather for a faster decision than the perfect decision, because I think there's a lot of complexity, and often you don't have all the data points to take the perfect decisions from the get-go. So rather take the best possible decision at that point in time, and then just learn from it, measure it, iterate fast. So I think faster decisions are better than slow, perfect decisions.
That's right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
for
Rhett.
the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.